lecture, I'm going to talk about how to negotiate contracts between suppliers and customers in the horticulture sector. My name is Saideepa Kumar and I'm a research fellow at the Tasmanian Institute of Agriculture at the University of Tasmania. I've prepared these lectures with materials supplied by Dr. Greg Clydesdale, who's a senior lecturer at Lincoln University in New Zealand, and Dr. David Mountain, who's a lecturer of agribusiness here at the University of Tasmania. In our last clip, we explored negotiation. In this clip, we explore what is commonly at the end of negotiation, that is, a contractual relationship. So what is a contract? The contents of a contract set out the obligations of the parties and document standard working principles and details of the service. That is, a properly constructed contract will become the framework of the relationship and act as the starting point for shaping governance requirements. In the previous clip, we said that when you negotiate, you must consider the ongoing relationship. A contract defines the obligations and working principles of that relationship. The contract may be the physical culmination of the negotiation, but the relationship itself is ongoing. Before you enter a contract, you should consider aspects of the partner which may influence the type of contract you need. The contractor that you partner with may be competent and trustworthy, incompetent but trustworthy, that is, he or she tries hard, competent but untrustworthy, loves the aesthetic of the work but adds costs, loves the aesthetics of the job and is realistic, gets the job done but only as the contract dictates, or gives a little extra but expects you to do the same. Ideally, when you form a contract, you've done sufficient research on the people you've decided to contract with. But if you're dealing with someone for the first time, you may find variation in performance which could not be foreseen. It is often not a case of dishonesty. You can be substantially hurt by honest people who are operating outside their ability. And sometimes even competent, honest people can misinterpret the contract and deliver an undesired outcome. For these reasons, it is critical to choose your partner in a contract well. Many businesses have gone bust because the person they contracted with let them down or went bust, dragging their contractual partners along with them. So research your partner thoroughly, including their financial strength. The problem is, contracts can never cover every foreseeable problem. Contracts are always incomplete in that no one can conceivably imagine every eventuality in complex modern business environments. Even writing down the descriptions of events that can be foreseen and described would take too long or be too costly to contract. Therefore, all contracts are incomplete and are open to interpretation, and this opens up the possibility of opportunistic behavior. Parties to a contract can exploit loopholes to gain an advantage over one another. It may not be that they're trying to rip you off. It may be that they honestly interpret the contract differently from you. Of course, you must also be aware that they may not be acting consistently with the contract, so you need to protect yourself. How can you do that? Well, here are some solutions to consider. Monitoring. Increase resources devoted to monitoring and verification to prevent inappropriate behavior. Explicit incentives contracts, that is, provide incentives for good outcomes. Or organization redesign, that is, bring vulnerable or sensitive contracted work in-house. That is, if there is some aspect of your work that you feel is particularly vulnerable, it might be best to do that yourself, that is, bring it in-house. You also need to set aside some resources for monitoring the performance. It may be necessary to include this within the contract and in the negotiations. Other options include providing incentives in the contract, perhaps a bonus for good work, example, completing by certain dates. Other solutions and considerations include adequately defining your requirements, for example, delivery times, contract inputs, not just outputs, that is, the materials used, evaluate the use of third parties, take solicitations from 3 different sources, don't accept the first quote. Verify the background of the other party, that is, the legal status, their reputation, previous contracts, their strategies, for example, if they are in the market for the long term, adequacy of their service standard and quality control. Of course, they may have completed the work on time and within budget, but used cheap materials. To protect yourself from this, you need to adequately define your inputs, stating brand names or the equivalent. Also consider the quality of any third parties that they may subcontract to. And finally, you should pay particular attention to the financial implications of any contract you entered into. You should consider the cost of switching to a new supplier if they don't deliver, identify areas you may have to supplement the supplier, the liability for loss or damage of property, the ability to terminate the contract and the method of termination, who owns the right to any new intellectual property that's created, and the methods of conflict resolution. The methods of conflict resolution should be written into the contract so issues can be dealt with constructively without derailing the whole agreement. And finally, you will need to consider under what grounds you may have to terminate the contract and how you would go about it. This should be written into the contract. I hope these 2 lectures on negotiation and contract negotiation will be useful for you, especially in the context of their application to the use of new technology and innovations. Thank you.